Welcome back, my friends. It's Friday, and that means you made it this week. You made it to the end of the week, and you are going to have a fantastic weekend. Now I'll give you a sneak peek what's going to happen in this video. Today, footage emerged, drone footage of Russians using an infantry fighting vehicle filled with 2 tons of TNT. The driver jumped out and let the vehicle drive itself onto Ukrainian minefields. It is an ISIS tactic, a vehicle designed to breach a Ukrainian defensive line. Well, it didn't work out that way. After that, we have Finland, of course, Suomi mainito, perkele. Finland yesterday closed 4 border points out of the entire 8 they have with Russia. The new Iron Curtain is reforming. And finally, there is an eerie document leak indicating that Putin planned to orchestrate a man-made famine in Ukraine ever since 2021 already, much like the holodomor that Stalin created in the 30s that killed almost 10 million Ukrainians. This is Avdiivka, and north of Avdiivka Russians are pushing like hell, and the losses later show it. This is the coke plant, and north of it this is the Terikon, the waste mountain. And now we'll immediately jump to footage filmed by a Russian soldier. It is filmed around this waste heap facing the coke plant. Since this footage is graphic, I cannot show you most of it, but I'll show you the beginning. Look at this forest. Reminds me of Verdun, World War I. Yes, it does. This Russian soldier was just sent here, part of the 2 new mobilized brigades to encircle Avdiivka from the north, and he's surprised. The coke plant is over there, and then he zooms into it, and you can actually see it behind these trees. So he's about 500-600 meters from it in a tree line. But what he doesn't like, and I cannot show you the rest, he pans the camera down and it's an endless field of his comrades, knocked out cold, sent to push up sunflowers. I do hope they had sunflower seeds in their pocket, and he's surprised. He says all of the ground is filled with corpses, mostly ours. We're getting properly the F word. This man is genuinely surprised because the reality that he sees here is not the reality portrayed on the Russian TV. But my friends, I have to open up the other side also, the difficult situation for the Ukrainian defenders. Right now, Ukraine has this season called Rasputitsa, which is mud and rain season. Ukraine has almost 5 seasons, one is rain and mud season. It devastated the Third Reich's armies that invaded the Soviet Union, and now it's devastating both Russian and Ukrainian armor and infantry with mud. And on this photo you can see Ukrainian situation in the trenches. This is their everyday life, and you can imagine how difficult it is that you are never dry, never clean, always cold and uncomfortable. I've lived like that in the army with short periods of time, and it was horrible. It was demotivating. These Ukrainian soldiers, unfortunately, I have to say the truth, they're not being rotated out because there's not enough men to be rotated in instead of these guys who have been living in these trenches for months. So they have to stay there not knowing when they're gonna get out. And you cannot do anything against the mud and rain because the irrigation systems to the trenches, if they are built, are usually destroyed by Russia's artillery. Same goes to the Russians. The trench life is exactly the same on both sides. There is no difference, and both sides do not get rotations. The situation is incredibly difficult for the Ukrainians in Avdiivka. Although they are the defending side, they're also fighting mud and rain like the Russians, offensing over muddy fields. This is the real situation. But does the Russian offensives from the north of Avdiivka to encircle the city of Avdiivka reflect in the daily losses? 17th of November 2023, and I gotta say yes it does, because 1,140 Russian servicemen KIA liquidated, sent to sleep with the fishes. Yesterday it was 1,300, so Russians are pushing everywhere and they're not saving manpower at all. With this rate, I'll say again my prediction, Russia will need to step up their hidden mobilization efforts or declare a limited open mobilization. Putin is afraid of that like fire. 27 tanks, 11 armored personnel vehicles, 29 artillery systems, 17 vehicles and fuel tanks, 2 special equipment. Overall, bigger than average losses. Now we'll leave Avdiivka and go to the south, and not the southern front, but the Kherson front, and we'll go to Krinky because that is also next to Avdiivka, one of the more active parts where both sides are making offensive operations right now. Recently, Russian Ministry of Defense admitted that they are taking a defensive position against the Ukrainian bridgehead formed in Krinky, admitted that they are unable to push them back across the river. Ukrainians are capitalizing on their bridgehead. Ukrainians have about 2 companies in Krinky, which is not a big force, and it's a miracle that they're able to wreak so much havoc with only 2 companies of infantry and some armored vehicles. Now I'll read you a report from a Russian soldier in Krinky. Alive, 300, which is a code for I'm wounded. Moderate weight, everything is fine. Meat grinder, there is no more company, indicating that almost an entire company was knocked out cold. I'll write from the hospital. Take care of yourself. No news. Right, 16th of November. Very short, but it gives us the truthful situation of the Russian forces in the Kherson front around Krinky. Now I'll read you another report from the Krinky area, and as we know, General Teplinsky is now responsible for the Russian army group in the Kherson front. With the special forces background, he is expected by Putin to push back the Ukrainian bridgehead. I'll read it to you. The Dnipro group cannot destroy 2 enemy companies holding a bridgehead of 10 square kilometers, so the Russians are talking about the Ukrainians of 2 companies. Due to the fragmentation and small numbers, this is such a discrediting of our main crisis manager, who became General Teplinsky, who replaced Makarevich, that there is nowhere else to go. Can I still tell the truth? That from the right bank there is such a stream, right bank is then the Ukrainian Liberated Bank, there is such a stream of fire of all types that these 2 companies dispersed along a front of about 6 to 7 kilometers, which need to sleep at some point and carry cargo from the boats, cannot be collapsed or pushed back yet. And diverting forces from neighboring directions is, to put it mildly, alarming. This indicates that Russians know that there is only 2 companies Ukrainians. That is a small unit, 2 small units compared to what the Russians have. They are frustrated that they are not able to push them back. They're frustrated that Ukrainian fire from the Ukrainian liberated side, the Kherson city side, is so non-stop and so intensive that it destroys everything Russia sends to the front. And they are frustrated that Teplinsky now has deployed additional reserves, reinforcements away from some other areas into Krinky direction to push the Ukrainians back. Russian soldiers here feel discredited and dishonored about this. Now, my friends, we'll watch a video together that is truly mind-boggling. See, Russians really want to breach the Ukrainian minefields and the defensive positions, and thus they have resulted into a tactic that ISIS was using. Russians filled an MTLB, which is an amphibious vehicle, supposedly also able to cross rivers. They filled it with 2 tons of TNT. There's only 1 driver, no crew, because it's designed to go on its own. Now we'll watch what the driver does. This happens near Vodiane settlement in the Donetsk region. This MTLB has a cope cage, of course, because it's filled with so much explosive. I mean, if I was the driver of this vehicle, oh my god, I would be sweating. So what it does, it jumps out. He probably placed a brick to the gas pedal so the vehicle would go. He aimed it at Ukrainian defensive position, jumps out, put the vests on, runs back. And the vehicle keeps on going because it's now a bombing vehicle, a breaching vehicle aimed for Ukrainian positions, filled with 2 tons of TNT. Right next to it you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 destroyed Russian infantry fighting vehicles that have hit Ukrainian mines. Let's see if this huge bombshell of a vehicle is able to breach the Ukrainian defensive positions. The Russian soldier runs away. There's another 2 destroyed Russian BMPs right here. Runs back, I guess he is fine. And now what is, oh, and you can see, kaboom, you know. This is one of the biggest explosions I've seen on drone footage in Ukraine. Check out the shockwave. Bada boom, it goes out. Huge. It did nothing to dismantle the Ukrainian defensive positions, but I'm sure it took out maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 anti-tank mines. So the Russian tactic now is to dismantle Ukrainian anti-tank mines with Russian infantry fighting vehicles. Great tactic, Ivan, carry on. And now, my friends, for a moment we'll go back to not Estonia but actually Finland, which you can see here, 1,000 kilometers of an additional NATO border to Russia. Russia does not have enough manpower to man all of that border because they need everything they have in Ukraine. And Finland now has closed 4 out of 8 border points with Russia, meaning the Iron Curtain is forming again. Yesterday, my government, the Estonian government, announced that they are getting ready for the potential closing of border with Russia if that would be necessary. If Russian neighboring countries from the European Union close the border points, then voila, we do have the new Cold War right here with the Iron Curtain forming between the NATO, the European Union and Russia and Belarus. But that is not it. Finland is also building a wall. I know it sounds very Trumpish, but they are. They're building an entire fence with Russia and it takes a lot of time. Finland is building a fence on the border with Russia. It is a plan to build 200 kilometers of fences in a few years. Building walls and fences on the borders is incredibly expensive and difficult. Finland is called the land of 1,000 lakes, and I mean this map is blurred, but you can see these small lakes, mostly marshes and wetlands, building up these fences. It's a miracle if they do it. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Finland does not feel safe. Russian troops are deployed along the Finnish border. In addition, Moscow has another tactic to destabilize European countries. The fence on the border with Russia will be built 250 kilometers from Helsinki, the capital of Finland. And you can see what the fence is. This is a small fence here. They will build a bigger one, and you also have to build a road next to the fence to be able to man the fence, the border, the points, everything. You have to take down these trees, and if we're talking about 100 kilometers, it's a lot of work. It was a significant number of immigrants pushed by Russians to the Finnish border and crossing also the Finnish border. Russia is using immigration as a weapon, using Wagner in Africa, in 5-6 countries, funneling immigrants into Russia and funneling them to the Finnish border and also through Belarus to Lithuanian and Polish borders, using these poor people as a weapon against European Union borders. We did manage those numbers, however, you would never know this kind of preparation for the future. Residents of Imatra fear the worst. Well, just uncertainty, I think, is what it is, because do you want to invest and put a lot of money into something and then, you know, within a year or so you will be under somebody else's control or something? I'm honestly glad to see that Nordic brother Finland is reacting so properly to it. Not like the European countries in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea. No, Finland is taking it seriously. Finland has the memory of the Winter War and the Soviet invasion. They don't have illusions. They know what's up and they're reacting how I would react. And now, my friends, an eerie leak of information from Russia's purchases of grain vessels from 2021 indicates that Putin planned to orchestrate a man-made famine in Ukraine, much like Stalin did in Ukraine in the 30s. Between 1932 and 1933, under the totalitarian regime of Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union engineered a famine that killed between 7 and 10 million Ukrainian citizens. The holodomor famine was part of an attempt by the Soviet regime to not only destroy individual peasants, but also the Ukrainian culture. In December 2021, Russia purchased 3 huge 170-meter grain carriers to export grain by sea from Ukraine. Also, in the first week of the occupation, the export of grain from the occupied territories began. Up to 12,000 tons per day were exported at these times. There are other signs of preparations for the export of grain. I remember in 2022 covering a lot of this footage where it shows Russian trucks, KAMAZ trucks, refitted to be grain carrier trucks, carrying Ukrainian grain stockpiles dry, putting all of it on the boats and ships, grain ships, and transferring it to Russia and then selling it to China, India and some African countries. Russia exported everything they could in 2022 from every occupied territory. This includes all of the food. Now, my friends, I want to share you a human story from Ukraine. Vasil Solyanik, a resident of the deoccupied village of Kamyanka, Izium district, Kharkiv region, has collected more than 500 music records since 1982. During the occupation, Russians lived in his house and destroyed the entire collection, because that's what they do. After a media shared Vasil's story, people started sending him records, record players and speakers from all over the world. Vasil Solyanik has already received records from different cities of Ukraine, the United States, Great Britain and Poland and other places. He says he never expected that and he's very grateful, People have sent him some very valuable records as well. I am very glad to hear about this. It is the human aspect which gives me hope. A man who lost his collection, and you know, if you collect something, you put a lot of effort and energy into it. You cherish it. And then Russians come in and destroy everything, and then other people helped him out. Such a heartwarming story, and I'm very glad I can put it in this video. And now, my friends, the best part of the video, and for the last time this week, because next time it's on Monday, the butchering of the Patreon names. And today we actually do have 5 new names. And I do have to say this, I'm now answering every Patreon message in Patreon from now on. So, you want to write me a message and get an answer, head on to the Patreon and write to me. Lars Putkman, Jonathan Pinard, Mikael, Tom 783, Linda and Ian. Thank you to all of these people. Thank you, my friends. And until my next video, which will be on Monday, Slava Ukraini, and bye bye.